Okay, hopefully we're waking up from our comfortable state of numb here on Organic News on Awake Radio. Hi, thank you for tuning in. I am Catherine Waters, my YouTube channel, April Waters with double T. Thank you for tuning in. And we have with us, back again, Eddie Craig from Rule of Law Radio. Eddie Craig, Air Force veteran, began realizing that the government was lying to the people at virtually every turn. He earnestly began his research into government rules and statutes in the mid-90s after he witnessed his mother's breakdown into tears of hopeless frustration over a property tax bill that threatened to take away her property and home. Angry at the malicious and callous demeanor of those that supposedly worked for the greater good of the people, Eddie began to carefully research and document the relationships between the various statutes and the legislative enactments that created them, especially the ad valorem property tax and eventually the federal income tax. He has since spent the past 11 years researching the various Texas codes such as Transportation Code. Much to the dismay of many municipalities, police officers, and prosecutors, he has thrown a large monkey wrench into the gears of their money machine, using their own laws. With Randy Kelton's passed down knowledge about due process and criminal actions, Eddie's research has become even more dangerous to them. Rigorous study and research reveal the truth. Most government employees know even less about the language and application of the law than the general public. Angered by the cavalier attitudes of public servants acting as if their ignorance was of no consequence, Eddie sought out other like-minded people to exchange ideas and find a remedy, which led him to Rule of Law Radio. Thank you again, Eddie Craig, for rejoining us here on Organic News on Awake Radio to discuss what happened to Sandra Bland.
Well, thanks for inviting me back.
I'm always sharing your secrets the police don't want you to know video, and I even wrote a piece of paper because, you know, when you ride the subway here in New York every single day, you know, you always hear the same. I almost have it memorized, the recording that they play about, you know, the police have the right to check your bags. You know, if you see something, say something. And I had this piece of paper that I pinned it to my knapsack that says, you know, watch Secrets Police Don't Want You to Know video on YouTube by Eddie Craig when they play that announcement. Because I mean, people they have no idea, I feel like, how much their rights are being eroded every day.
Right.
Okay, so I found a dash cam arrest of Sandra Bland. I'm not sure if it's the official one, but I'm going to play that first.
Okay.
Get out of the car! And then I will light you up. Get out!
Wow.
Now!
Yeah, see, this is not an official video. It's you know, it's got subtitles and stuff that, you know, unless you're watching it, you're not going to be able to, you know, to know that it's. It says an altercation began when Bland was asked to put out her cigarette.
You mind putting out your cigarette, please?
I'm in my car. What I put out my cigarette?
Well, you can step on out now.
I don't have to step out of my car.
Step out of the car.
Bland was accused of assaulting a public servant in an altercation that occurs off camera.
Well, you're about to break my wrist. Can you stop? You're about to fucking break my wrist.
Stop! Now! On your butt.
Slam my head into the ground.
Sit up on your butt.
He's telling me to get out of here.
Later on in the video, Encinia is heard describing his side.
I mean, I don't have serious bodily injury. But I wasn't kidding.
3 days later, Bland was found dead in her jail cell. The FBI have now joined in the investigation into her death. It's being treated like a murder investigation.
For a failure to signal, you doing all of this for
Get over there.
Right, yeah. Yeah, let's take this to court. Let's do
Go
it.
ahead.
For a failure to signal, yeah.
Okay, so that's the one video. So Eddie Craig, you've seen the video, and just before we went live on the air, you had told me that he had no right to tell her to get out of the car.
That's correct. At the time when this incident that your video began with, where he is asking her to put the cigarette out, the stop had already concluded. The officer had already informed her that he was going to simply give her a warning. He had already gone back to his cruiser and written that citation. He had already returned to her car and given her that citation. What he did not do was inform her that she was free to go. And what she failed to do was to ask if she was free to go. Instead, it was at that point that he began to attempt to escalate this by keeping her on the scene and ordering her to put out her cigarette, which he had no authority to ever do in the first place. Not at any point in the stop is he authorized to demand that she put out her cigarette. Nor is he authorized, or is it a lawful order, for him to order her out of the car because she refused to put out her cigarette.
Right.
And if you notice, that part of the video is exactly where it went. She said no, and he said, well, then you can get out of the car.
Right.
He had no authority to make that order.
And
None.
he actually said that I am giving you a lawful order by demanding that she get out of the car.
Right.
And
that
then,
was an absolute lie.
Right. So, I mean, just in general, what is your take on that whole scenario and her ending up dead?
Well, my take on it is this officer is complicit in her death, even though he may not have been the one that killed her, because she should never have been in that jail cell in the first place. The fact that what he arrested her for was the same thing that 99% of the arrests at traffic stops are actually based upon. The offense of contempt of cop. You didn't act slavish enough, fast enough, you didn't lick boots hard enough, or kiss his butt with the proper pucker. That is the problem.
Yeah.
This was all about how he wanted to control her and make her do what he commanded without question. He was on a power trip.
I believe in a news show that I was watching that this officer has a history of racial incidences in the past.
That, if memory serves on what I've seen, was actually the sheriff of the jail in which he was in.
Oh, so not this particular, not the arresting.
The officer that arrested her is Department of Public Safety. He is a Texas State Trooper. What he was before he came to this job was a manager of a creamery, a place that produced cream from cow's milk. But obviously he didn't like beating the cream. He wanted to use it on people, so he went to be a cop instead.
Right. And so in your experience and what you've been teaching people with your secrets the police don't want you to know, I mean, it's precisely incidences like this that you see happening with people all the time. And
yes.
you actually say in your secrets the police don't want you to know that police are looking to escalate the situation.
Yes, part of their training is to attempt to escalate every traffic stop into either a DUI or drug bust, wherever and whenever possible.
Even if there's no alcohol or drugs involved.
Right. Even if there's no reasonable suspicion of such, That's the whole reason they ask the questions. How much have you had to drink today? Where are you coming from? Where are you going? Do you have anything in the car I need to know about? This is all in an effort to get you to say or do something that will allow them to continue to dig and to escalate the time that they can hold you. Therefore, it gives them time to initiate more of this prodding to get you to say something they can then use.
He never went in either one of those directions, though, this Encinia.
Well, that's exactly what he was trying to do when he started telling her to put out the cigarette. See, here's the problem with you smoking a cigarette in the car. If someone is smoking marijuana in your car, believe it or not, from the outside, it smells very much like stale cigarette smoke or an ashtray. So if someone in the car is actually smoking a cigarette, it will mask any of that coming if there's any actual drugs involved. So the reason he wanted the cigarette out was so that he could then make the assertion that because she had her windows rolled all the way down, he could say he smelled marijuana after she put the cigarette out. And then make the assertion that she had only started smoking it to cover up the smell of drug use. That's what he was after.
Which is then later they tried to say that she had marijuana in her system. They
actually tried to say that after 3 days in jail, she had massive amounts of marijuana in her system.
Right.
And here's the problem with that assertion. When her mugshot is taken, she is already in a jail jumper. She is in that orange paper uniform they put you in when you're locked up. That is not the proper booking process in any place in Texas. Your mugshot is taken the moment you're taken in and your fingerprints are done, you're taken in and your mugshot is taken. You're not changed into jail garb first. You were taken, your picture's taken in the clothes that you were wearing when you're arrested. The only time that doesn't happen is if they had to take you directly to a medical facility and then they don't give you your clothes back if they're bringing you from that facility back to the jail. That didn't happen in her case.
So what does that imply, that she was already wearing the jumper when her mugshot was taken?
It implies that they would have already done a body cavity search on her before they ever put her in the jail cell. That's one of the things that they're doing, and they have two-pronged basis for it. One, it is now illegal and a felony in Texas to carry any type of illegal substance or tobacco product into general population in any detention facility in Texas. That means if you go into general population with so much as an unsmoked cigarette, then they can charge you with a felony. Okay? So in order to get around all of that, they've made it where you have to sign the waiver to conduct the search before they can put you in the general population. All right? They would have done that search. They would have already known she didn't have any drugs on her. Plus, since she was in the jail jumper, she wouldn't have had access to anything that was in any pockets of her clothes. Nor was there any evidence entered or charges levied against her at the time of her arrest involving drugs.
Right.
And anyone that's ever smoked marijuana and had to do a drug test is going to know they may have trace amounts after 3 days, but there is no way they're going to have massive amounts after 3 days, which is how they try to portray her autopsy.
Right. Do you in any way believe what some are saying, that she is actually already dead in that mugshot, laying on the floor?
It is entirely possible if you could prove that the photograph is not an edited photograph. If it's photoshopped, they can make it look like anything. But for the most part, when you look at it, if it's real, then it brings a lot of questions to light, just like the ones that are raised. One, the background she's standing against is gray, and she is flat up against it. It's not like she's standing a few inches in front of it like you would normally do for a mugshot. By the shadowing on her left side, she is right against the gray background.
Right.
Her dreadlocks are hanging back towards the gray background instead of down naturally the sides of her head and toward her face.
Right.
Those, if the photo's not edited, that would be a very good piece of evidence that she was not upright and possibly not alive at that moment.
And so you actually think that they would go that you're saying they would go that far.
If it meant covering up an in-jail murder, I know for a fact they would go that far.
Exactly. I know, it's like, oh my God, like this is...
We've actually had sheriffs and constables here in Texas back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s that were convicted of crimes against black people they had arrested and beaten to death. They beat one man to death on the courthouse steps trying to get him into the jail, and he wasn't even resisting them.
Right.
So... yeah, and the sheriff of the jail that she was in was actually fired from a previous job because of racism. So how he got to be sheriff here, who knows, but odds are his background firing was not brought into the foreground while he was running for election.
Right. And they also were trying to say that she had told a correctional officer that she had made a previous suicide attempt.
Which, from what I understand, her family is saying isn't so.
I believe it was the district attorney who gave this presentation talking about something like 30 scars that were in the process of being healed.
Yeah, but the 30 scars could be from any type of accident, not necessarily a suicide.
Do they have any picture? Are they're showing any pictures of these?
Not that I've seen.
Or maybe, I mean, is it possible that they gave her, some kind of? I mean, I don't, it's with the direction that this is going in. I mean, now I'm starting to think, of that possibility that they would even.
Well, until we know conclusively whether or not that photograph, the booking photograph, shows that it's been edited and such, we won't know positively anything in that aspect. We may not even know exactly when it was she allegedly committed this suicide. But having worked as a jailer in a county jail here in Texas, over in Nacogdoches County, we don't leave things in cells like the one she was in that they could use for that, especially if they were on a suicide watch.
Right.
And there was no report in any of this during the first episodes where they were talking about her committing this suicide. No one ever mentioned that the jail had her on a suicide watch. And if she had made a confession of prior suicide, that's the very first thing they would have done, was put her on suicide watch. Not only that, she would not have been locked in an open cell like the one she was in. She would have been locked in an isolation cell.
Right. So no matter how, they're trying to make all these excuses to excuse themselves of any kind of accountability, but no matter how they're trying to slice it, they're still held accountable, or should be held accountable, because she died under their watch no matter what. And they're still liable, right, because if she told some correction officer about some previous suicide attempt, they left her means to be able to carry that out.
Yes.
So if
they actually had left something in that jail cell that she could use for that purpose, absolutely, blame can be laid at their feet. But that's what I'm saying. If she had said that she had tried to commit suicide before, that would have been an immediate 24-hour suicide watch at a minimum. And she would have been put into an isolation cell. That is standard procedure in Texas.
So where do you see this going? Do you see any accountability ever happening?
If you want an honest answer, no. not unless someone comes up with a monitoring video, which should exist.
Right.
Now, understand this. Most jails in Texas have a camera system that monitors the walkways, but not the actual cells, except for the isolation cells. The isolation cells have cameras in them. The rest of them have cameras that monitor the hallways and such, but not necessarily directly in the cells in what we would call the dorms or general population. A dorm is simply one great big room that's got a whole lot of people locked up in it on bunk beds and such. And then a general population cell is 2 bunkmates in a single sliding door cell. And generally they'll line both sides of the hallway in that case, and then the far back side of the jail will be the general population dorms. And at the very front, where all the officers are normally at most of the time, being lazy and careless and doing their duties, at the front is generally where the jail is set up with the trustees and the isolation cells. They're usually closest to the officers because they're the ones that need to be monitored more closely than the rest.
Right.
But at least that's the way it is in Nacogdoches County. But you would think that that design would be fairly standard for the purposes of what the cells are dedicated to. But in any case, they would have been able to see into an isolation cell if someone was doing their job and monitoring the cameras like they're supposed to.
Right.
And when I was working the jail, I was the only one that did 15-minute runs through all the halls and did the walk-arounds. I was the only one that would do that. Everybody else would sit on their keister and do nothing unless told to. And I found that kind of odd, but in any case, I wasn't the highest ranking person there, so it wasn't up to me to tell them what to do. I did my job, and that's all I was worried about, was doing my job and doing it right.
Right. And so this district attorney, when he gave this presentation, he also talked about, and I forget what he called it, the mark on the neck. There was a term that he used. I forget what it was. He's ascribing it only to like someone hanging themselves.
Right. But the ligature on the neck could very well have come from something else, and it's not necessarily consistent. Only a medical examiner or a doctor can tell what that's consistent with. And they hadn't done an autopsy yet. So there is no way the DA could readily say what that mark on her neck was from. But what I will say is in the mugshot that we discussed earlier, if you look at her jawline on the right about the middle of her jawline, it's what looks like either a series of scratches or a bruise. It's hard to tell in the photograph because it's not very high resolution. But she's got something right on the center line of her jaw, and that was not normally on her face. So the question is, what was that mark in addition to? Because that mark is not consistent with someone that hung themselves. Unless that would be a rope burn, in which case the mugshot would have been taken after she had hung herself, right?
Right. There's a video of her booking in jail. I haven't seen that one yet.
Nor have I.
Let me play it. It's like just less than 2 minutes.
In the U.S., 3 in 10 college students drop
I think
out.
it was a commercial.
But how can you spot who's at risk? The one who lives far from campus? The one who works the night shift? The one with new responsibilities?
It's a...
One thing can't tell you, but the right combination can.
Okay, skipping.
Again, just so everybody understands, we're doing this because we've received death threats. We've received threats to our facilities. And it's vitally important that people understand that the information that they may be relying on is incorrect. There she is. Officer Goody takes her in the bathroom. As you can see, she was in her street clothes. They're now going to get a bag. This is where she's going to change out of her street clothes into her orange jumpsuit. she is. Now, the Waller County Jail employee, now he's putting her mattress pad and her blanket, all the things that she's going to have in her jail cell. Again, this is the booking desk area. It's kind of the central area of the Waller County Jail. I know most of y'all have already toured the jail. We'll just let this run here because in about so she's been sleeping in the holding cell, and this is where the infamous mugshot is taken against the wall, where people have gone to great lengths to try to insinuate or imply that she's deceased. And the photograph is, you can actually see the photograph being taken on the computer by the Waller County jailer right there.
So that's off of the Washington Post website for the Washington Post. Right, he's trying to, it shows them taking a picture of her, her mugshot up against a wall. But, I mean, again, it doesn't mean that they can't take another picture of her.
Yeah, what color is the wall in that video?
It's hard to see. It's like all the way over in the upper, like, right corner of the video. It does look... Hold on, let me... Yeah, Washington Post. I got... See, it's hard. It's going to load. The commercial is going to load again if I try to go back to the end of the video. But it, it does look like it's some kind of a gray, dark color.
Okay. Well, you will notice that during that, even the reporter says that she is in a holding cell, not an isolation cell.
Right.
A holding cell is a general holding tank where they will throw everybody that gets booked in the next X amount of time or over the hours to just stir together. Generally, there's nothing in there except for a concrete bench, or I don't know why they would have given her anything other than a pad. They wouldn't have given her a mattress because there's no individual bunks in those usually. So if she was in a holding cell, she was not on a suicide watch. Right.
And also the, the incident, right after he got her out of the car, and, she yelled that he slammed her head to the ground. So, the whole, like, forcibly pulling her out of the car. And, I mean, it's off camera. You can't see except for the passerby who took the video of the rest of the arrest, where she's saying that her head is getting slammed and she can't hear.
Right.
So all of that, I mean, it's possible that those injuries could have exacerbated if she wasn't given medical attention after they brought her to the jail.
Well, it depends. Without the autopsy saying she suffered some injury to the brain, I don't know what that could have been.
Yeah.
Certainly none that would have resulted in suicide, I would think.
Right.
It might explain the abrasion on her jaw, but we won't know for sure one way or the other unless the ME either diagnoses it as such or she was around to tell us, and she's not.
And I'm trying to remember, her cause of death was asphyxiation, they said, right? I believe.
Right.
And, I mean, again, this is just kind of going in line along with, I mean, here they just had the year anniversary of Eric Garner. And tomorrow, as a matter of fact, is another court date for Ramsey Orta, the young guy who filmed the video of Eric Garner, who's been arrested multiple times instead of the officer who put Eric Garner in a chokehold, which ultimately caused his death.
Right.
people are talking about Miss Chapman. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to remember her first name. There's so many names. Who in Alabama was also a day after Sandra Bland found dead in a jail cell. Let me see. I'm sorry. I got to look her name up. You know, so I mean, it's instead of things getting better, they're getting worse. What advice do you have on your rule of law? There is a whole, you know, which I printed out, you know, for people and how to, you know, to deal with and speak to police. And the fact that she was, Sandra Bland was actually stopped for changing lanes without signaling. Was that in your, you know, is that even warranted for pulling her over?
In the case of what they have in these, anything that they consider a moving violation in Texas, yes. The problem is a lot of the things they pull people over for, they're not allowed to pull them over for. And the other issue is as to who they applied to in the first place, and it's not the general public as they would have you believe. But let's take, for instance, an officer that is running a license plate scanner and actually comes back with information that says there's no insurance on the car according to what was pulled up by the scanner. So they initiate a stop of the car because their computer says no financial responsibility. That's actually an illegal stop in Texas. There is no authority whatsoever for that officer to make an arrest without a warrant in the case of financial responsibility. It is completely outside of any delegated authority in the statute to make that warrantless arrest.
So not having insurance is not a legitimate reason of being pulled over.
Correct. Neither is no driver's license. It also is not in the same subtitle that deals with where the warrantless arrest authority comes from. The only, in fact, neither is registration. Even if you don't have plates or stickers on your car, that also is not within the subtitle where they can arrest without warrant. The only thing involving the stickers that they can arrest for is the inspection. That's the only one that is in Subtitle C under Chapter 548. It's the only one that is considered part of a moving violation. But again, they could only arrest someone that was commercial. They can't use those statutes against the public. They're doing it. They're saying they can. But if you actually dissect the rights and the way it's written and everything else, it's impossible. It simply doesn't work that way. They have used this code to abuse us and steal from us for decades.
Can they pull people over for not wearing seatbelts?
The seatbelt statute is in Subtitle C, but again, that would apply only to a driver of a commercial motor vehicle or a passenger in the front seat that is under the age of 15 or 15 years or younger. But the difference there is what's a driver and what's a passenger. The driver is someone getting paid to take that passenger from point A to point B, and the person is a passenger because they're the one paying to be taken from point A to point B. It's not just somebody riding in a car. It's not just somebody behind the wheel of a car. It is a driver who is getting paid to transport that person that is the passenger who is paying him to go from here to there. And it must be someone 15 years of age or younger in the front passenger seat. They can be in the back and they're not required to wear a seatbelt. So this click it or ticket stuff that Texas DPS has going on, where they're writing tickets to anybody in the car, is absolutely without lawful authority of any kind.
So what is the public to do? I mean, in this case with Sandra Bland now, I mean, there was no justice with Eric Garner a year later. Sandra Bland. I mean, what does the public have to do?
There's nothing the public can do with the way the system is currently set up.
To demand accountability.
There's nothing that they could do other than be vocal. It wouldn't matter if you voted who's in office, out of office. How does that get a grand jury to indict? And the problem is you have a prosecutor who refuses to seek an indictment. You have a grand jury that is not aware of its power to investigate these things on its own and indict. Because in Texas, that's exactly what the grand jury is tasked with by the Constitution and the statutes. The grand jury has the right to look into any allegation of a criminal act, no matter who is the alleged perpetrator. And they have the authority of their own volition to indict. They have their own authority to order an investigation, to subpoena witnesses, to review evidence, and hand down an indictment all on their own. But they are not made aware of this power. And the prosecutor is in control of everything they do and everything they see and hear.
So they're investigating themselves is what they're doing.
Well, that's what the jail and the DPS are doing. That's what they always do. This is why the grand jury is the only direct remedy we have against rogue public servants. They're the only ones that can hand down an indictment. The prosecutor, despite what they try to say in Texas, does not have any authority in law to refuse to prosecute. If the grand jury indicts, the prosecutor has to find out, all right, fine, you want an indictment. Here's what I've got evidence and can prove. You got to indict him for this because I don't have evidence for that. Well, the grand jury can say, well, we got all the evidence, and yes, you do. Here is the evidence you need. And he's obligated to prosecute, but they won't do it because they are in bed with the cops as the source of their ability to stay in office and to have a job and to gain power and fame and all this so they can seek a bigger job with a bigger paycheck or at least a more lucrative way to steal.
I believe it was Baltimore and the Freddie Gray. I believe it was the Freddie Gray incident where the grand jury. Sorry, I'm just trying to remember because it was something like the grand jury was not holding those officers accountable. Right.
They refused to indict.
Right. I'm just trying to make sure, I'm just trying to get it straight and that I'm not mixing up the Freddie Gray or the Mike Brown incident also with what's his name, Wilson, with the Wilson guy. But it was the Freddie Gray incident. And then also Eric Garner, the grand jury, it was the same thing. They voted to not indict.
Correct. And the reason that the grand jury 99 times out of 100 will not indict is because the prosecutor presents them with information in such a way as he makes them believe that even if they indicted him, he couldn't get a conviction. He basically lies to the grand jury about what he could do and how he could do it in order to get them to choose not to put him in the scope and force him to have to do it.
So you said the people need to be vocal.
No, I said they could be vocal, but that's not going to change anything directly. The only direct impact we could have is through the grand jury and jury systems. So unless, of course, we have a revolution, hang every politician, and take the system back over and set it back up correctly again with safeguards, with teeth. See, this is my one problem with American government and both the federal and the Constitution of every single state. None of them included any ability within its language for the people to be able to use it as a method of biting the heads off rogue politicians. Every constitution should have punitive clauses against the officers holding each of those offices that can be directly invoked by the people that created and voted in that Constitution. If you violate this Constitution, not only can the people impeach you, they can criminally charge you. They don't need anybody from the government to do it.
Right.
The people can get together
Right.
and decide to do it.
Right, something. I mean, there's got to be something that the people could do. Sandra Bland's family. I mean, I do believe that they have gotten independent lawyers, you know, to investigate. You know,
but again, you're still having to play in the same
yeah.
muddy pool of water,
Right.
trying to get justice out of a system
Right.
that does not want to give it to you.
Right. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Eddie Craig, people can find your work and they can print out the PDF of how, you know, it gives a whole script of how to speak with the police, know your rights, only open your window like 2 inches, keep your doors locked. So it's ruleoflaw.com.
Ruleoflawradio.com, and that's one of our sites. And our main site is logosradionetwork.com. And if you want to be able to download the script she's referring to along with the other and see what is coming on the website I'm trying to develop, you can go to the logosradionetwork.com/TAO, Tango Alpha Omega. And there you will see the landing page for information on the upcoming Tower of Law website. And you can get the links there for the scripts to download them directly.
Thank you so much, Eddie Craig. And check out his video on YouTube, Secrets the Police Don't Want You to Know. Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, now I'm calling Shirley Belton, who's going to talk.
Hello?
Shirley?
Hello?
Shirley, can you hear me?
Hello?
Shirley, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I hear you.
Okay, great. So how are you involved with what's going on with Ramsey Orta, the guy who took the Eric Gardner video? How are you involved in that?
I am very much involved because I am also a fellow Staten Islander of this forgotten borough. And I have firsthand communications with him. I have been working with him since the onset. I've been to every single one of his court appearances, and the last one I helped facilitate his release by help posting bail.
Right. So he has another court date tomorrow morning at the
Yes.
Richmond County Supreme Court, right off of the Staten Island Ferry in St. George. And what is it? What is the latest? He was just in jail again. They arrested him again under trumped up charges.
Yes, it's more trumped up charges. The first one, it was trumped up by him saying that he had passed on a gun to this vanilla sister, and he didn't do that. And they wanted to get fingerprints and DNA and all of that, and they couldn't get what they want to hold him, and so they had to come up with some more trumped up charges. And the second one, and then she left, okay? And he knew her, and that's the thing. So it was a setup because he knew her, and she was involved in setting him up, and then she cut out. She wasn't from here. So anyway, the second one was trying to say that he was selling all types of drugs, all types, anything you could possibly think of. And they raided his apartment, and they not only arrested him, but they arrested his family too. And his mother has a case also, which is horrendous what they're subjecting his entire family to. He even has a younger brother who's he's a kid, you know. And then the latest one is he left Staten Island. He left Staten Island, okay, because they were continually following him, targeting him. From not only before Eric, which was his friend, got choked up by Pantaleo, but after that, shining lights into his home here on Staten Island, and then following him to Manhattan. And that's where the third arrest was. And there they said that he sold some drugs to an undercover cop. So it's the same thing. He sold drugs to an undercover cop, and the second time, and they had video, and now they're saying he sold drugs to. I mean, who would be so idiotic? Who would be so stupid? You know what I'm saying? He's a young kid. Granted, he's a young kid, and he does not deserve to be subjected to all what he's being subjected to. If anything, he is the people's hero, because he's the one who was out there taking a video of his friend being choked to death, hearing him say 11 times, "I can't breathe." And we saw all of this. And then Dan Donovan, he allows the cop to get off, Pantaleo to get off scot-free. I mean, scot-free. Nothing has happened to this cop. And Ramsey is the one who's been locked up several times.
If you could,
he's the one who, when he was in Rikers Island, they had what you call it, a rat poison scare. Okay, when he was in there, and he refused to eat, and thank God he did that. Because he could have been one of the people who were got sick from the rat poison. Now tell me was that a coincidence?
How many times has he been arrested since taking the video?
He's been arrested 3 times on trumped up charges. And 3 times.
How long altogether has he spent in Rikers Island? For the first time was a pretty significant length of time, wasn't it? With when the rat poison incident occurred?
Yes, because listen, they made the bill so high. I mean, it didn't make any sense. But and they do that. And this last time he was in Manhattan criminal court, and the district attorney, she wanted to lump up all the different charges together. But thank God the judge did not allow that, right? And she tried to make the bill high again, like over $50,000. Other times it was $75,000. I mean, and so it did not work in her favor. And as a matter of fact, the drug was fake. Okay. And so they had to reduce the bail, and he's out. And he has a lot of support, but he needs a lot more. He deserves a lot more support. Quiet as it's kept, this has been happening to this choking has been happening a very long time. These killings have been happening a very long time. Now, I'm not talking about people just getting killed. I'm talking about killings by cops on innocent people. It's been happening for years and years and years, all over the United States. And like, what happens is we rise up, and then we say something, and then it dies.
Right.
Rise up and say something, and then it dies. But with Ramsey Orta taking this video and making everybody see this, this is what gave people the courage and to acknowledge that there is most definitely a problem. Not only here, but all over the United States. And it gave the Ferguson kids, I mean, the youth, they were powerful over there. It made them rise up and say, hey, you know what? We don't deserve something like this. I mean, in Charleston, I mean, all over the place, it made them rise up. And we need to acknowledge that Ramsey deserves his kudos. He is a whistleblower. He is the people's hero, not the cops. We know the problem is we are manipulated by the powers that be, right? They manipulate our thoughts through social media, through them taking a situation and turning it around and making it seem like there's a problem with us and not a problem with the system. The system sucks. The system is working exactly the way it's supposed to be working. And it's working against us. And you can't say all you have to do is take the cops and reform them. That's not going to work.
Right.
The bottom line is, if you put the camera on them, then what good is that supposed to do? A camera was on them when Ramsey took the video. So what we're not supposed to do is believe our lying eyes. So when they have the camera, it's something to believe, but when we have the camera, we're not supposed to believe that. And, you know, more and more people are coming to realize there is a problem. There is racism. There is white imperialism. And people, they don't want to acknowledge that things are as bad as they are. Because if they acknowledge that, that means they have to act on it.
Right.
And a lot of people don't want to come outside their comfort zone and act on the problems that exist.
The problem, though, is the longer the public does that, the more they're inviting this problem right into their own life directly. So that,
but you know what?
There goes that plan.
They're not acknowledging that. They're not. Yeah. Okay, if they say, hey, you know what? We're not the ones who are out there. I mean, these people, I'm not saying that they bring it upon themselves. That's how they look at it. But they are out there. We're not out there. But you know what? Ayanna Stanley Jones, she wasn't out there. She was 7 years old, asleep on her couch, right?
Right.
And they raided her apartment and shot her in the head. She wasn't out there.
Right.
You know, what you call it? Nicholas Haywood Jr., he wasn't out there. He's a 13-year-old child in 1994, playing with a toy gun with an orange tip in his own backyard. And they came and they shot him. I mean, it's not something that you should be blaming people for living their lives.
Exactly.
So, bottom line is, Eric did nothing wrong. He deserves to live. And to say that what Pastor did, there was nothing wrong with it. That's so horrendous. That's so immoral.
I mean, especially because it was ruled a homicide, his death.
Most definitely.
And I wanted to just mention really quickly the complaint form that Eric Garner filled out while he was in Rikers Island about an officer, William Owens, I believe his name was, for giving Eric Garner strip searches, cavity searches in public on the street, which is why
there was a cavity search of Eric Garner way before this happened, and it was brought up. But you know what? The powers that be, they know how to dismiss stuff and to make stuff go away. And that's just what they did. And bottom line is, they were after Eric, okay? They were most definitely after Eric. And the papers, like the Post and the Daily and Channel 5, they distort things. And of course, Staten Island Advance. Now, the bottom line is, Ramsey was his friend. They were friends, okay? He wasn't a passerby. And that particular day, when that went down, everybody didn't know that Eric was out there. He stopped the fight, okay? But before that happened, I know for a fact that there was a cab driver on the corner of Victory and Bay, and he was told, not asked, but told by the police to move his car so they could see down the block, okay? And that's what they did. So they were targeting him. Yeah. And even with the EMS workers, they were already, they were there before they were called down to the block, okay? And even when they got to the block and was there, they still didn't help Eric Gardner. They still did not, they let him die. Just as much as Pantaleo choked him to death. And I don't understand I guess I don't really have to understand, but I know I do have to change how the system works. And no, if you can't say, hey, we're going to let the politicians do this, because you know what? They have had a hand in this. And here on Staten Island, our councilwoman, Debbie Rose, she wants more cops in our community, okay?
Right.
So they're doing such a great job, but she wants more cops. But we need to be there for Ramsey. And he has a court date tomorrow, okay? And he needs the protection that he deserves. If it was the other way around, if the cops wanted him, they'd have him under protective custody. They wouldn't let anybody get to him. Nobody.
So we're asking, and anybody in the local area to please support the Ramsey Orta, who filmed the Eric Garner video tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at the Richmond County Supreme Court. Right, it's right across the street from the Staten Island Ferry on the Staten Island side. So
that's right.
Thank you so much, Shirley.
He really needs to have your support. He deserves your support.
Right.
And not only physically, but financially. He needs all the help he can get.
Thank you so much, Shirley.
It's hard for him.
Right. Okay. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Peace and love.
Good night. You too.